Good morning, Oracles. Do you wish you can go back 10 years and invest in Tesla? I know pretty much everybody on the planet would say so. Even Gordon Johnson would probably say, while he thinks that Tesla is overvalued, he would probably have invested in them in 2012 if he knew that this is how the stock was going to run. So now looking back at that, saying, all right, what was it in 2012 that made them turn the corner? That was the Model S. The Model S was out and the company turned the corner and they started to climb. Now granted, they had a lot of roller coaster ups and downs over the last 10 years. You know, since 2012 through 2018, it was a pretty rough road until the Model 3 came out. But the Model S is what started the ball really rolling. And so it was a few years prior to that they had the Roadster come out. And the Roadster was, obviously not a production type vehicle that was going to be mass produced, but it was the introduction of what could be. This is what we saw at AI Day with Optimus. Optimus came out, we saw a little show and dance from Optimus, and that was kind of the Roadster of the AI generation that we're about to step into for Tesla. And so while the EV wave for Tesla has just started to go ramping up as it is, we have an AI wave that is significantly larger that is going to be taking over the next 10 years. Now the difference between now and 10 years ago is 10 years ago, Tesla did not have a foundation and fundamentals of a profitability that could sustain them going forward through any rough times in the macroeconomic environment. Currently, they are extremely profitable, have a lot of cash on hand with $17 billion, and they can pretty much do what they need to do to get through and survive because they have proven with vertical integration how profitable of a company they are. Plus, being the #1 EV manufacturer in the world means that they are ahead of everyone else, especially as the entire world is transitioning to EVs. So it's not like they're going to be running short of any cash to support them and their future endeavors. Now, back in 2012, no one really thought that EVs were going to even become reality for all of the world. It was a little niche market that Tesla was clawing its way into, and nobody thought anything of it. Most analysts were like, they're not going anywhere, not a big deal. Then the Model 3 came out, and a lot of light bulbs started going off. And then when Tesla started to prove that they could scale the Model 3, then people started realizing and being like, oh, and they were waking up to the reality of what's going on. And so then they started to price in the potential of Tesla. So they priced in energy, some priced in robotaxis, and then EVs, and they're based on their 50% growth. Most of that has been priced into the stock price, which is where we are today. And the argument comes down to with analysts is, well, how much of the future do you want to price into the stock price now versus how much is it actually worth? Which is why we have such a discrepancy amongst analysts of, how much should the stock actually be worth? Because, you can look at the future and the potential total addressable market that they have is larger than any other company has ever had in history. But will they actually get there? How do you value that? Because going into AI, there is no AI sector. That doesn't really exist right now. So how do you price that into a stock? You can't. It was very similar back in the 90s when we had the dot-com bubble. A lot of people, were trying to price in, what they didn't know. How big could the internet actually be? And so we saw a bubble forming. Now, obviously, the internet has now taken over to a point in our lives where most people couldn't live without the internet. And so now put yourself 20 years down the road, imagine a world where we just couldn't imagine ourselves living without AI. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, this is something people couldn't fathom about the internet, but look at where we are now. So people right now looking at AI thinking, that's never going to happen, we've been living without AI for this long, we don't need it. Just remember what happened with the internet. This could potentially happen again with AI. So looking at the AI space, how do we price it in? Obviously, we don't want to create a bubble like we had for the dot-com bubble, but it's like, how do you price in a technology that could revolutionize labor as we know it with the largest total addressable market on the planet? How do you price that in? You really can't. And so that's why there's so much discrepancy of, where do you want to be? But now let's take a step back 10 years ago again. How did you factor in and price out an EV space when it didn't exist? Well, guess what happened? 10 years later, we saw a 750% increase in the stock price in 1 year, and the rest is history. So obviously that space was created. Obviously the entire world now is moving into that space, and Tesla is at the forefront of it. Here we are. We're at the beginning again. We have Tesla saying that they're going to be larger AI than EV company in the future. This is what Elon's tweet was talking about in response to Dave Lee. He says Tesla as an AI company is going to be larger than they are an EV company. Well, if you wanted to invest in Tesla 10 years ago, before the Model S came out, what did you want to do right now? Do you think that Tesla is going to be exploding into an even larger company in the AI space going forward over the next 10 years? Or not? And now obviously this decision comes down to the exact same decision that many investors made back in 2012, which was faith. Do you have faith that Elon and Tesla can take the company to a place that nobody has ever gone before? They did it in 2012, and they started with the Model S, and then the X, and then the 3, and then the Y. Do you think they can do it again with Optimus in a space that is significantly larger than EVs? Because if you do have faith in them doing that, obviously you want to be a long-term investor right now, because your gains over the next 10 years are going to dwarf the gains that many investors had between 2012 and now. So obviously people who are invested prior to this have already seen the first split, have already seen that first giant wave jump in their stock portfolios, and it made many of them millionaires. And now as we move forward into the next wave with AI, those millionaires are going to become tens of millionaires, and the rest of us can now become millionaires ourselves. And now I'm not a financial advisor. I don't have a crystal ball that works properly. So for me, this is just based on my opinion, my faith in where the company is going and the direction that they are headed. And that is why I am investing the way I am. And what's great is this future in AI is just the grand scale of things. We still have 2 other S-curves that we have to go through as well. We've got the EV S-curve that has just started up. We've got the energy S-curve, which is about to start up. We've got the robotaxi and FSD S-curve, which that one there is going to revolutionize transportation as we know it. And that's where FSD and AI are really going to come into play together there, because AI is going to take over the vehicles that we drive around. AI is also going to take over the Tesla bot that we have coming out in the future. So that's why Elon is stating that AI is going to play a much larger role in the future of Tesla than EVs will, because the AI is going to encompass everything that Tesla is going to be doing. And just think about it when it comes down to, Neuralink. Let's go down the future 10, 15 years. We've got Neuralink now up and working. What is Neuralink's first goal? Their first goal is to be able to connect human brains with limbs that are not functioning properly, so that their brain can reconnect and have that to be able to function their limbs. All right, well, guess what? You have a Tesla bot. Your Tesla bot has limbs. What's to stop you from having a Neuralink set in where you can just think about something and your Tesla bot is going to do what you would like? Perhaps you're in your car and you're driving around, or your car is driving you around, and you're like, oh, you know what? I want to play a different video game. You don't even have to hit a button. You just think about it and it will happen. Now, obviously, this is many, many years down the road when it comes to Neuralink and how it ties all together, but the reality is that is a potential that could happen down the road. Obviously, there's a lot of people out there who could be concerned about this as a potential threat to their safety and security. Think about the fact that even at this point right now, it's creepy enough to have Amazon deliver a comforter to you, and they do it while you are sleeping and make sure you're tucked in, because that's how creepy Amazon is when they're listening to you on your phone. So having a Neuralink, so where it's listening to your thoughts, that could be even creepier. However, this is what the future could potentially bring, and that's why we have all sorts of different regulations that are out there. And so what I love about Tesla and their future is the fact that they have now looked and said, EVs are great. EVs got them to where they wanted to be. That's what kind of kicked off this whole entire company and moving forward into where they want to be. And EVs are still going to be their main bread and butter focus for the next 3 to 5 years. But that's not where they're headed. Their real goal, AI, is so much larger than just an EV company. And right now, the EV company itself is looking to produce significant gains for many of us over the next 10 years. And that doesn't even include AI and minimal robotaxi in many cases. So think about when you start adding in all these other pieces, it's an extremely exciting future that we have ahead of us for Tesla. And switching over to AI and how Elon would love to incorporate that with SpaceX getting to Mars. I've talked to many of you on here and discussing how that's literally Elon's #1 mission is to get us to Mars. And everything he does with all of his companies are around that, between SpaceX and the Starship getting us to there, the Boring Company to be able to go up there and build underground cities, AI and Tesla bots to be able to work on the surface out in the elements of Mars without having to worry about them. Everything that he is doing is for that. So if you see anything in his companies or anything that could potentially get them to Mars, know that Elon is focused on that and is going to succeed with that. And so while Optimus and the Tesla bot probably won't produce any revenue for the company for at least 5 years, what it's going to end up doing is using them in the factories will cut down on costs significantly, especially when it comes to payroll costs, making the company more efficient, less downtime because, humans only work X number of hours in their shift, they take vacations, there are holidays. Tesla bots can work through holidays. Tesla bots will only need time to charge, which won't be 8 hours most likely. So the first thing that we are going to see coming out of the Tesla bot and Optimus is going to be cost-cutting measures that are going to happen within the factories, which will in turn increase the margins that we see for the EV side of their business. And so for me, I'm just really excited to see what's going to happen in the future with AI and Tesla. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think about the future of Tesla with AI, and how far do you think that they can go with it? Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate all of your support and feedback. If you have not subscribed, please do so down below. Sign yourself up for notifications. I am over on Twitter at OracleTim1. I share all of the latest Tesla news, pertinent stock market information, and all of my daily trades. Thank you so much. Have a great one.